Welcome to my YouTube channel Bachelor and Master English. Today we are talking about The Tiny Closet, a drama in one act by American playwright William Inge. In today's discussion, we shall be looking at the text at a glance, and there will be list of characters and summary will be discussed in English and Nepali, and there will be 4 levels of reading which I have included under comments. So, interpretation, critical thinking and assimilation are there, and I am sure you will accompany me till the end of this video. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe my channel, and if you have been watching my channel not as a subscriber but as a regular viewer, I request you to subscribe my channel, and if you think this video is worth watching, please share with your friends and recommend them. So, without getting delay, let's go with the text, and here is a tiny closet at a glance. So, this is a drama it published in 1952. Actually, there were 11 pages here in the first publication, and the theme is curiosity as the main cause of human weakness, women's jealousy and unnecessary concern over other private personal matters, and plot. You see, this one act flick consists of 4 characters: Mrs. Crosby, a widow landlady of a boarding house; Mr. Newbold, her roomer, occupant of a room; Elsie, her maid servant; and Mrs. Hogesheimer, Mrs. Crosby's friend and her accomplice. Mr. Newbold found that somebody was repeatedly tampering with his room lock, monkeying with it time and again. His closet was his only private world where he wanted to maintain his privacy and not allow others to see it. He repeatedly reminded the landlady about it, but she pretended not to know about it and assumed she would allow none to enter it. Mr. Newbold, in his 40s, was a nearly gentleman with neatly dressed, soft spoken, well behaved gentleman who took great pride in his grooming. He was a shop walker in a street and was praised even by the landlady as his best roomer. Mrs. Crosby was exceedingly curious about why that man didn't want anybody to enter his room, and what was in that. What was it that made a very private world of his own? Is a communist living under some pretension like a red teacher pretending Christian as Mrs. Hogesheimer? Or is she simply harboring a lunatic or a spy? The woman's suspicion grew limitlessly. Curiosity grew again. She could not control herself, and with her accomplice, Mrs. Hogesheimer, she opened the lock when Mr. Newbold was away. They found all hats, very beautiful, finest women's hats piled up there. Mr. Newbold had also returned from his work and hid unnoticed. He saw everything they did. He was there, but he did not speak any word. Now he felt a final defeat, a great loss, his stiff pride and erect authority destroyed. He picked up the hat they had placed the chair and even wept. Eventually, he restored the courage and decided to take revenge on the lady. Mrs. Crosby, the owner of the boarding house in which he has been a roomer. He twisted the hatpin, took it in his hand, and went to the kitchen to destroy the lady and called her. "Could you come here a moment, Mrs. Crosby?" The suspense is left behind the curtain. This is the plot of the tiny closet. Now you see the characters I already mentioned. There is a principal character or protagonist is Newbold. Mrs. Crosby is the antagonist, and Mrs. Horgesema is accomplice of the antagonist, and Elsie, a maid servant of the boarding house. Okay. Now here is summary. The story takes place in a boarding house, a midwestern city in the USA. Mrs. Crosby is an American landlady, and Mr. Newbold, the roomer of about 50, is a tenant to Mrs. Crosby. She likes him and even calls him a moral guest. Mr. Newbold seems unusually possessive of his closet. Once he complains that someone is monkeying or tampering with his closet lock. He requests his landlady and wants her not to enter in his closet in his absence. Mrs. Crosby assures him that she would permit no one, even the cleaning woman Elsie, to go near his room. He explains that the tiny closet belongs to him as long as he pays for it, and he wants to have privacy in his room. But the mystery of the closet is killing her because of his frequent warning. She is suspicious of unusually keeping his room tidy and never let anyone enter his room. Despite his repeated caution and the revelation, she wonders and plans to see inside the room. As soon as Mr. Newbold goes out of the house, she makes a phone call up her accomplice, Mrs. Horgesema, and narrates everything. She suspects whether he might be a communist, a spy, a criminal, or a lunatic living under her roof. Finally, Mr. Newbold's closet is open. To their wonder, they find dozens of beautiful hats and hat materials in the room. It indicates that Mr. Newbold is fond of making hats. He is a very fine hat maker. She says that she can tolerate a communist but not a man who knits hats. It's a kind of exaggeration, hyperbole used here. Well, her friend Horgesema takes the matter normally. It's commonality for her. Mrs. Crosby cannot stand it and decides to send Mr. Newbold out of her house. She could tolerate a communist, but not the person who prepares woman's hat. Who enjoys? It's a kind of libido that can be noticed here. Freudian psychoanalytical part is also incorporated here, and that can be sensed. Anyway, Mr. Newbold returns home quite early while the ladies are spying on his room. Seeing them inside his room, he becomes quite nervous and cannot confront them, so he hides himself in one of the rooms. Smelling his return, both ladies pull out of the room hurriedly. After a while, Mrs. Horgesema leaves the house hurriedly to avoid the further involvement, as she is afraid of being caught. Mrs. Crosby, however, is determined to face Mr. Newbold using power of a landlady. She examines the graceful hats once again, tries it on in front of the mirror, and goes to the kitchen. Mr. Newbold picks up the hat goes to the kitchen and lovingly Mr. Newbold picks up the hat lovingly and weeps. Soon he recomposes himself in a few seconds to call out her, taking hatpin and going to the kitchen door, calling Mrs. Crosby with the motive of killing her. The suspense is left behind the curtain. What happens is not mentioned here at the end. This we can only presume. Okay. This is all the summary of the text, the play in English. Now let's talk about this play in Nepali. एउटा सानो कोठा, चिटिक्कको कोठा, चिटिक्क कोठा र त्यो भित्रको चिटिक्कको दराज। यहाँ चाहिँ दुईटै सेन्समा दुईटै अर्थमा प्रयोग हुन सक्छ। यो एउटा सानो दराज पनि हुन्छ, त्यो कोठाभित्रको अर्को चाहिँ कोठै हुन सक्छ। विलियम इङ अमेरिकी प्रयोगवादी नाटककार हुन्। यस एकाङ्कीमा 4 जना पात्र छन्। यो मिस्टर न्यूबोल्ड बाहेक 3वटी आइमाई, मिसेस क्रस्बी, श्रीमती क्रस्बी विधवा घर मालिकनी हो, एल्सी उसको नोकर्नी, अनि मिस्टर न्यूबोल्ड उसको किरायादार, त्यहाँ बस्ने मान्छे। त्यो एउटा खाना बस्न सुविधा भएको, खाना पनि बस्न पनि सुविधा भएको चाहिँ एउटा घर, त्यसलाई बोर्डिङ हाउस पनि भन्छ। त्यहाँ अरू पनि किरायादार छन्, तर 40 नागेको जुन एउटा न्यूबोल्ड भन्ने एकजना त्यहाँ मान्छे छ, एउटा दोकानमा फ्लोर वाकरको रूपमा काम गर्छ। तर उसको लवाई खवाई बोली हिँडाइ ठाँटबाट यति शिष्ट, यति भद्र भलादमी जस्तो रहन्छ कि ऊ एउटा रहस्यको पात्र रहन्छ। अब आश्चर्य लाग्दो कुरो छ, उसको कोठा त्यस्तै सफा र चिटिक्क, कसैले गएर हेर नपर्ने। घर मालिक नि श्रीमती क्रस्बीमा चाहिँ अनावश्यक शङ्का जाग्छ क्या त्यो देखेर। यो मान्छे पनि चिटिक्क, यति रहस्यमय र यति एकान्तिक देखिन्छ। मेरो कोठामा कि मैले यहाँ कम्युनिस्ट पाल्या हुनुपर्छ, कि एउटा जासुस पाल्या हुनसक्छ, कि पागल पाल्या हुनसक्छ, कि अपराधी पाल्या हुनुपर्छ, नत्र किन उसको कोठामा कोही नपस्नु, दराज नखोल्नु, अनि त्यो मेरो सानो एउटा व्यक्तिगत संसार हो भनिरहेको छ त त्यो मान्छेले। मेरो दराज किन नखोला भन्छ त। त्यो आइमाई र उसको मतियार जुन छिमेकी छ श्रीमती हर्गसेईमा मिलेर हिजो पनि ताला खोले। उसले कसले मेरो कोठा खोल्यो, यसो गर्न भएन भनेर अनेक बिन्ती र अनुरोध गर्यो घर मालिकनीसँग। आज ऊ हिँडेपछि दुईटी शङ्कालु आइमाईहरू मिलेर फेरि खोले र उसले थाहा पायो बाहिर जान्छ भनेको गएर छिट्टै फर्क्यो। खोलेको देख्यो अनि अन्त्य सानो कोठामा लुक्यो र ती आइमाईले दराजभरि सुन्दर नमुनाका जुन महिलाका चाहिँ टोपहरू मात्र देखे। छक्क परे। त्यो उसको जीवनको एकमात्र रहस्य खुल्यो। अनि एकपल्ट बिरहले एक्लै रोयो। भताभुङ्ग भत्केको सम्झी फेरि सम्हालियो र जुन टोपको पिन फुस्काएर त्यही फलामे तार हातमा लिएर त्यो दोख बुढीको सास निमाउन सोझै उसको भान्सामा गएर बोले, श्रीमती क्रस्बी, झट्टै यहाँ आउनु पर्यो, कहाँ छौ? उसको तिक्तता र आवेग हेर्दा बुढीले आजै स्वर्ग देख्छ होला। तर बुढीले स्वर्ग देखि या देखिन भन्ने कुरा यहाँ जानकारी दिएको छैन, त्यसमा प्रश्न पारिएको छैन। यो खास चाहिँ एउटा मनोवैज्ञानिक पाटो पनि छ। उसको श्रीमान श्रीमती क्रस्बी एउटा विधवा छ, उसको श्रीमान छैन। यता न्यूबोल्ड लगभग 50 को हाराहारीको मान्छे छ, उसको श्रीमती छैन, तर ऊ चिटिक्क परेर बस्छ। उसको एउटा भित्री मनमा चाहिँ एउटा त्यो मान्छेसँग यौनिक सम्बन्ध राखौँ कि यो मान्छेसँग आफ्नो चाहिँ एउटा विवाह त अब विवाह पनि हुनसक्छ, त्यो मान्छेको बारेमा व्यक्तिगत सबै कुरा उसलाई जानकारी पनि छैन, उसको श्रीमती छ कि छैन, छोराछोरी छन् कि छैनन्, यहाँ उहाँ उसलाई थाहै छैन। केवल के थाहा छ त भन्दाखेरि त्यो मान्छे एक ठाउँमा काम गर्छ, उसको कमाइ धेरै छैन, मान्छे एकदम शिष्ट भद्र र कसैको ईर्ष्या डाहा गर्ने मान्छे छैन, अब एकदम चाहिँ भद्र मान्छे छ। र यस्तो मान्छे पाए त आफ्नो जीवनको साथी पनि हुनसक्छ। अब बाँकी जीवनको साथी अब यसै बसेर के गर्ने भन्ने पनि उसको मनमा चाहना हुनसक्छ। एउटा मनोवैज्ञानिक रूपमा चाहिँ त्यो विश्लेषण एउटा फ्राइडियन अथवा फ्राइडवादी विश्लेषण गर्ने हो भने अब उसको चाहिँ उसँग चाहिँ एक खालको एउटा ईर्ष्या जुन जागेको छ त्यो मान्छेलाई आफ्नो बनाउन जाएको हुनुपर्छ के। अब यहाँ चाहिँ के भनिरहेछ त भन्दाखेरि यो सानो दराज, अब यो यसका जुन एउटा नाटकहरूले मान्छे अर्काको जीवनशैली र वास्तविकता बारेमा अनावश्यक चियो चर्चो गर्ने कुरा र त्यसले उब्जाउने परिणामप्रति हास्यास्पद पाराले व्यङ्ग्य प्रहार गरे जस्तो लाग्छ। आफ्नो बोर्डिङ घरमा कस्ता मानिस बस्छन् भन्ने बारेमा चासो राख्ने बोर्डिङ हाउस सञ्चालिका श्रीमती कर्बीको छिमेकी उसको चाहिँ मतियार हर्गसेमसँग हुने अनावश्यक अड्कलबाजी र अन्तमा दुईजना मिलेर सानो दराजको साँचो खोली त्यहाँभित्र भएका चिजबिजहरू खोतल्ने एक बेइमानी घर मालिकनी र उसको मतियार छिमेकी श्रीमती हर्गसेमा नैतिक रूपमा कमजोर पात्रका रूपमा प्रस्तुत भएका छन्। आफ्नो घरमा किरायामा बस्ने न्यू वर्ल्डको बारेमा श्रीमती क्रस्बीले छिमेकीलाई मैले जासुस वा अपराधी, पागल वा कम्युनिस्ट वा षड्यन्त्रकारी के पालिरहेछु, आफ्नै छानामुनि यस्तो त बुझ्नु त राम्रोसँग बुझ्नु त पर्यो नि, यो त रहस्यको पात्र छ भनेर न्यू वर्ल्डको बारेमा सुनाएको प्रसङ्ग अत्यन्त महत्त्वको छ। कुनै जबकि कुनै आकर्षक रूपमा रहस्यमय लाग्ने मानिसको बारेमा जो कोही पनि उत्सुक हुन्छ र त्यो उत्सुकता एउटा बोर्डिङ हाउस सञ्चालकको हुनु अस्वाभाविक होइन, तर उसको अनुमति बेगर, जुन न्यू वर्ल्डको अनुमति बेगर उसको कोठामा गई दराज खोल्नु चाहिँ मुनासिब लाग्दैन। हुन त श्रीमती क्रस्बीले आफ्नो घर र आफ्नो सुरक्षित रहन भनेर यसो गरेकी दाबी गर्छिन्। महिलाले मात्र आफ्नो कोठा दराज कपडा चिटिक्क पारेर व्यवस्थित रूपमा राख्न सक्छन्, पुरुषले होइन भन्ने परम्परागत मान्यता विरुद्ध न्यू वर्ल्डको कोठा देखिनु, न्यू वर्ल्ड आफै पनि सबै किसिमले आकर्षक देखिनु पछाडिको रहस्य उसको कोठा खोलेर थाहा पाउन खोजेकी छन्। घर मालिकनीको मानसिकता पनि नारी उचित देखियो। श्रीमती क्रस्बीको व्यवहार स्वाभाविक र सही लाग्न सक्छन्, स्वाभाविकै हो, वर्जित गरिएको फल खान जसलाई पनि मन लाग्छ भने जस्तै श्रीमती क्रस्बीलाई न्यू वर्ल्डको सानो कोठाभित्र के होला, सानो दराजभित्र के होला भन्ने रहस्य पत्ता लगाउने चाहना हुनु अस्वाभाविक होइन। यता न्यू वर्ल्डको आनी बानी अस्वाभाविक मान्नु स्त्रीयोचित धर्म पनि हुनुपर्छ। भाडामा बसेकै अथवा किरायामा बसेकै भए पनि आफूले त्यसको भाडा तिरुन्जेल आफ्नो हुने हुनाले न्यू वर्ल्डले त्यो घरबेटी र छिमेकी महिलालाई बारम्बार चाहिँ एउटा सम्झाउने हिम्मत देखाउनु र न्यायोचित र पुरुषोचित व्यवहार पनि लाग्छ। डेराको कोठामा बस्नेहरूको हाल विश्वभर एउटै हुँदो रहेछ भन्ने कुराको उद्घाटन पनि यस एकाङ्कीमा भएको छ। घरबेटीहरूले अथवा बोर्डिङ हाउस सञ्चालकहरूले मन लागेको बेलामा आफ्नो भाडामा बस्नेहरूको नालीबेली सबै जान्न खोज्नु, आफ्नो घर र आफू सबैतर्फबाट सुरक्षित रहन खोज्ने मानव स्वभाव जस्तो बुझिन्छ। अझै अमेरिकामा त घरबेटीहरू मानिसहरूप्रति बढी शङ्कालु र अनुदार देखिन्छन्। अर्को अब हामी जस्तो नेपाल जस्तो अरू देशहरूमा त कस्तो होला। अर्को कुरा, यस नाटकले प्रश्न पार्न खोजेको के छ भने अविवाहित वा एकल पुरुष राम्रो सरसफाइ लवाई खवाई साथ अर्कोको चासो नलिकन बस्छ भने त्यसप्रति जो कोही महिला पनि ईर्ष्यालु हुन्छन् भन्ने कुरा पनि यस नाटकले प्रश्न पारेको छ। अर्को कुरा, एउटा चाहिँ अधमैसे पुरुष आफ्नो घरमा बसेको छ, आफू विवाहित भए पनि आफ्नो चाहिँ विधवा अवस्थामा पुगिसकेको महिलाले उसँग चाहिँ एउटा सम्बन्ध राखेर आफ्नो एउटा सफल बाँकी दाम्पत्य जीवन बिताउने, बाँकी जुन जीवन छ दाम्पत्य जीवन बिताउने चाहनाले गर्दाखेरि पनि एउटा आफ्नो किरायामा बसेको मान्छेको सबै गतिविधिहरूप्रति चासो चियो चर्चो गरेको हो कि वास्तवमा यो श्रीमती क्रस्बी न्यू वर्ल्डसँग चाहिँ उनले आफ्नो चाहिँ एउटा सम्बन्ध राख्न एक खालको चाहिँ वैवाहिक सम्बन्ध अथवा चाहिँ यौनिक सम्बन्ध राख्न खोजेको हुनुपर्छ। त्यही कारणले गर्दाखेरि पनि चाहिँ अब अथवा उनले धेरै चाहेको तर उसले वास्ता पास्ता नगरेको हुनाले पनि अब यसको के रहेछ त, यसको अरू महिला रहेछन् कि यसको चाहिँ के छ, यसको वास्तविकता बुझ्नु पर्यो भनेर उसले त्यसो गरेको हुनुपर्छ। जस अर्काको चियो चर्चो गर्नु, अर्काको चाहिँ एउटा व्यक्तिगत मामलामा चाहिँ एउटा जबरजस्ती चाहिँ प्रवेश गर्नु खोज्नु राम्रो होइन भन्ने कुरा यो नाटककारले यहाँबाट प्रश्न पार्न खोजेका छन्। ओके, द्याट्स द पोइन्ट अफ डिस्कसन इन नेपाली. Now let's go with critical comments. These under two levels of reading here. One is interpretation, another is critical thinking. Comments which I have included as comments. The Tiny Closet is a play in one act by American playwright William Inge. This play may be trying to show the weakness, curiosity, jealousy as nature of human beings. Especially the writer tries to show women's curious and jealous nature to know about the private life of people in contact. The drama may also be trying to mean that over curiosity has a disastrous end. Besides, it also reveals that the feeling of superiority always creates conflict. It tells us that we should live formal life of our living style must be common, normal in nature. In fact, this play is interesting, very interesting, and finely written modern one-act play that embodies all these dramatic qualities, all the dramatic elements. This Tiny Closet beautifully presents the negative consequences of curiosity. However, I would like to ask some questions regarding this. Is it possible for Mrs. Crosby to be too much curious about Mr. Newbold? Is it possible for Mr. Newbold to be always too much neat and clean with such a low income? How can Mrs. Crosby conclude that Mr. Newbold is a spy criminal only by making women hats? How can we believe that Mr. Newbold will be able to kill Mrs. Crosby with the support of the hatpin? How can a landlady interfere her tenant's secrecy? Can such a coward Newbold do harm to the landlady? Okay, this is reader's perception, and this is what we call in the 4 levels of reading, it is assimilation. Before reading this play, The Tiny Closet, I was too much curious to know about the private life of others and become jealous of them. But after reading this piece of literature, I came to know that being too much curious, jealous and about others' life is worthless. And know many things about human nature. I have known many things about nature. When the secrecy is disclosed, it makes people more terrible. At the same time, we should not be over curious about anything. Sometimes it is a dangerous or harmful consequence for us. It brings harmful consequence or dangerous movement in our life. There comes dangerous mood in our life and how to handle. So I have decided not to be too much curious about and interfere others' private life and affairs. William Inge's play teaches us that human beings are never satisfied with their present emotion. The more they know, the more they are upset. That's the tragedy of human fate. Okay, that's all with the discussion of The Tiny Closet by William Inge. I am sure you got the points. If you are the new viewer, please subscribe my channel and please share this video to your friends and fellows. Thank you very much for your time and patience.